Peace and blessings. I am Shivata, aka King Chi, Chidiki, and I am back with another tool for your toolkits. Today is Wednesday, last time I checked, and it is Wisdom Wednesdays. So today I'm going to open up the discussion concerning being home alone. Nowadays, as adults, being home alone, a lot of us look forward to it because being home alone doesn't necessarily mean being lonely. Peace euphoric moon. However, that's not the only thing I want to really dig into. On my IG, I mentioned that us, myself included, as latchkey children, experienced a home alone that is much like the movie itself. Okay, and just on a whole nother level. So as you tune in, please say hi, because I'd love to shout you out and put some hearts in the chat. I love the hearts. Love, love, love. Spread the love. All right, so how many of you have seen the movie Home Alone? Remember back in the day, Macaulay Culkin, the kid that gets left in the airport, or I'm sorry, he gets left at home and his parents don't realize that he's missing until they're in a whole nother place. Crazy. Yeah, super crazy. Um, and then how many of you remember that at some point while he had this whole adventure, but at some point he does mention, like, how could they leave me? Right? There's like this, in a child's mind, there's this toss between, was I forgotten because I'm not wanted? Am I alone because no one wants to be here with me? Versus I'm alone and I can do whatever I want. And what's funny is that I got to see it as an adult, as a parent with my own child. And then I got a chance to look back at how I used to interpret being home alone versus now as an adult, how it affects me. All right, so this is going to be pretty interesting. If you were either an only child or even an eldest child, but you felt alone at home, or you were a latchkey child. So we're talking about children who had a lot of responsibility at a very young age, and especially those who could turn the key to their door. They were the person to turn on the lights, to cook, feed themselves at a really young age. If that was you, shouts out to you. All right, because not everybody knows this story. Not everyone really understands some of us adults who like can run a house with our eyes closed because of stuff like that. Um, but it's a different kind of thing. It's a different background because not everyone had that, but it's not like it's uncommon. So put one in the chat if you were one of those children who got to walk home from school or take the bus or whatever home from school and open up your own door. You had the little lanyard. Back in the day, we had the little lanyard with the key on it, or you had your little favorite keychain that you would braid. That's how we used to do it. We used to create our own keychains back in the day, right? And collect, what you call it? Jansport strings. That was the thing back then. That was the thing back in the 90s. All right. So let's think about this, right? When I'm going to start present day. So back in the day, because my son is grown now, but back in the day, you know, I had to do what I had to do as a single mom at the time. And there was this moment when, as per usual, he thought he was coming home. He had the house to himself, and he didn't know I was home. Okay. And I got to hear and witness the way this young child was processing the space of coming home and having the house to himself. At that age, it appeared to excite him because he could get into things that he thought no one would ever know. He had what felt like total autonomy and like kingship over the entire environment. And when you are young, you think about it, whenever you're in a space and you have the opportunity to do whatever you want because no one's there to check you, like, who's going to check me, huh? Right? Even if you're doing stuff that you're not supposed to be doing, by the time someone else finds out about it, you've already enjoyed the thrill, right? You understand that feeling. Okay. So I heard him come inside the house, but as soon, it was like so exciting that as soon as he came in the house, not even like came in the house, take off the shoes, the book bag, get the home. No. As soon as he came in the house, he was like, oh, yes, nobody's here. And I can go, like, I'm going to go eat these chocolates, right? So I used to have the chocolates up in the cabinet, and he was sneaking and eating them. This is the day I found out, because before I couldn't prove it. You know what I'm saying? But this is the day I found out. So he's like saying out loud what he's gonna do, all with his chest out loud and strong. I'm gonna eat this chocolate, and nobody, nobody's gonna tell me anything, right? So I'm like, dang, like that's how he feel when I'm not around. I don't know if you have children, how your children feel about you. I don't know if you really don't care, but usually us good parents, yes, I'm judging y'all. Good parents, we care how our children feel. Like when we're not around, we do actually want to know how they're processing this whole relationship, because it's new for us, it's new for them, and it's a lot of responsibility. So we do the best that we can, and we do what we think is the best, right? So, anyways, so in hearing that, I realized that my seemingly quiet child had quite a voice, an opinion, and a very creative mind. I'll say creative mind because most times the creative children, they get in a lot of trouble because they have a grand imagination. So I realized that at that stage of development, being home alone didn't seem to create at that time a child that was feeling neglected, right? Coming home, freedom, could do whatever I want. I'm gonna get to my homework. I might not. I might go outside and make sure I get inside before mom comes home. Okay. The thing is, as a child, I felt the same way. When I was coming home from school and I got my keys, I was very excited to get my keys for the first time, because growing up in Brooklyn, New York, a lot of kids were latchkey kids. Okay. So when I didn't want to, once I got the permission to walk home by myself and have my keys, I didn't want to stay at latchkey for that long. I wanted to get home. Get home. I could go in the door by myself and turning on the lights, checking the fridge, what I want to drink, what I want to eat. And like old school, y'all already know, like there's certain things that you're not allowed to eat before dinner, blah blah blah. When you a latchkey kid, you eat whatever you want. You do a lot of things you're not supposed to do, because you could get away with it. Nobody's there really to tell on you. Nobody is going to tell you no. Okay, so just think about that, right? These are some of the building blocks, um, psychologically in the mind, the relationship between the child and the authority, and that child grows up, right? That child grows up. So coming home, doing my homework after maybe a nap, because I was definitely a sleeper, getting on the phone for hours, 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 chopping it up with my friend who also was just holding down the ship at home, right? Who's going to check us? Nobody. We on the phone, right? So I was able to do that and then get work done at some point. But how does it go, right? Your parents get home. They're like, they do the checks. Okay, they're looking, because you have chores, right? So kitchen, if it's straight, straight, no question. Did your homework? What do we all say when our parents ask us, did you do your homework? Put it in the chat. Parents come home from work, it's late, they see you chilling, You did your homework? What do we always say? Exactly. Yes, ma'am. Oh, yes, sir. Yes, yes. Regardless if the homework is done or not, right? If you say yes, you're good. Oh, Carla, yo, that's a good one. No homework or yes. I didn't get any homework. Okay. So, in my household, if we didn't really, I say we, I want y'all to peep this, right? So I was an only child, but amongst my peers, we didn't really say we didn't have homework because growing up in a Caribbean neighborhood, household, family, no homework meant that someone was going to give you work. So most times we would just be like, yeah, homework done. Okay. Um, Very seldomly, I don't really remember having my homework checked. I remember that when my homework was done, I used to want to show it. I used to want to show it because it was like I was very proud of my work. All right. What happened was there were times where I stopped showing it because then the parentals wanted to correct my homework or tell me that my homework wasn't neat enough to hand in. And I realized that showing my work was probably going to set me up for more work. So I digress. The answer is usually, I'm good. Homework's done. But in reality, a sister was on a train finishing homework, doing homework in class, in between classes. And from that, a very bad habit occurred. But if I didn't feel it in my grades, I didn't think it had that much of an impact because what do we always say as kids? Like, why do I have to do this anyway? This is not that important. This is not going to matter to me when I become an adult. Right? Press one in the chat if that happens. Because I mean, we're kids. We don't see the connection here. Right? Work ethic, not really. And on top of that, I was in performing arts, and my performing arts schedule was crucial. Like, it was a lot. I was already performing professionally by the time I was in like third, fourth grade. You see what I'm saying? So, like, schoolwork, I was getting it done. But then I looked at some of my peers who had the same kind of circumstances, and it didn't always work out that well for them. You know, they might have been failing or just making it by. And as children, coming home to that empty house, it felt like fantastic. I can do whatever I want. But anytime things occurred, there was no one to come home to talk to about it except for your peers, because you would spend time talking to your peers on the phone, or you would sneak outside. I had to sneak outside. I wasn't allowed to go outside. But or you would be outside because some of you could hang out on the block and you would talk with your peers. Okay. Now moving forward, back then when you were a child, it gave you a sense of autonomy. It gave you a sense of responsibility. You know, you learn how not to burn the house down. You learn how to organize yourself in such a way that at least you don't get in trouble. So you know how to move around authority. Um, you know, like, okay, at this time, dinner has to be made, or I should have eaten by this time. You know, all those little things. And so there's the pros and the cons. But psychologically, there's also this piece where when the person emotionally, the child emotionally is developing, and they need to understand why they do certain things. Like, for instance, have create imaginary friends. We have imaginary friends, and then we also have spirits. But we don't really look at why the imaginary friends or the imaginary circumstances are created at such an early stage of life, And if we think about it, those can absolutely be a means of addressing the thing that can't be explained. So, for example, the imaginary friends or the imaginary family that a child starts to talk to in that space where they're home alone. They're playing the parts of all these different people that emotionally they desire to be there. And so they practice creating this illusion that softens the blow of the reality that no one is there. So something like that carries over into adulthood where relationships that are forged with other people, they in reality are much less connected than they really are, but the imagination is so strong with building the illusion of connection that these faulty relationships sustain themselves through imagination. It's like these adults then connect with others with a deeper sense of belonging. And it takes a long time for them to realize that it's not being reciprocated at the same level because they have a strong defense mechanism that will blind them to the emptiness in the connection. Does that make sense? Press one of you beginning to understand how the home alone factor and leaning on yourself for emotional comfort and building your emotional intelligence in such a way that you are constantly self-soothing, that it becomes a crutch where it's not a healthy, I'll take care of my own emotions. It's like they don't end up being able to respond accurately or appropriately to the absence of someone on the other end of what is supposed to be a two-way street in a relationship, whether in friendships or in intimate relationships. So it's like you have the person who is feeling like this is my ultimate best friend. You know, I can tell them anything, I can talk to them, but they don't realize that they're pouring so much into that connection, and that person is not really behaving the same way towards them. In reality, they even experience how people disappear, and they're confused by it because in their minds, the little bit of attention created this deep, long lasting connection versus what the other person really experienced when either one, they too have detachment and resistance to deep connection, or they have it so in their mind, they're just responding to what is real for them. The connection is not that deep. And so there's no one really to blame, but this is more of a self-awareness. Okay? So I want you to look at what it is that you learned or you experienced from your home alone time as a child, especially in regards to how you developed your emotional intelligence. Was it mostly alone and with the creativity of your imagination? And did you address that as an adult where you were seeing patterns of not responding, kind of like being numb or shutting down, not properly responding to the neglect that you experience in your friendships or with other family members, just as an adult, because we have more say so as adults. So the way that we think about things, the way that we process, the way that we can express our desires and rightfully have and expectation of others who are in a place to respond thoughtfully and with consideration is different. So I want you to just think about that as an adult. And if you have children now, what do you do? If you are a single parent, or you're even um, a two-parent household, but you both are out of the house a lot in order to make ends meet, what do you do to foster an environment where the child or the children who are now responsible at a level of an adult at an early age are shown support and acknowledgement from you all, to check in, to show that you're present, to ask the right questions, even though you might be exhausted? Okay? How do we explain to our children, I am exhausted and why? And I'm working like this because. And although I may not be able to connect as deeply every single day with you, I'd like to schedule some time at least once a week or right before you go to bed. If it's on the phone, some children put themselves to bed at night because some parents work overnight. Okay? Even if it's over the phone, I want to hear about your day. Is there anything you experienced that you have questions about? That way we can continue to cultivate children that feel heard and have some guidance. Some guidance. Guidance is important. And although as kids we're like, I don't need guidance, I have all the answers. Once you're 8 years old, you know everything on the planet. It is good to reinforce that it's okay for them to be a child. I'm a Capricorn, and children who are given a lot of responsibility at an early age end up still wanting to experience that childhood at some point in their lives. It's like it doesn't go away. It's the same way where children are in foster care, never knew their parents, but for some reason they're always looking for the parent at some point in their lives. It's the same way. So children who don't get to be children are going to be at some point consciously looking for ways to express their childlike side, or unconsciously behave like children in situations where they should be acting like an adult. And so for those of you who are constantly telling somebody you're acting like a child, you're acting like a child, you're acting like a child, this might be at the root of that. Okay. So that's it. I didn't put the link in there, but got new copies out of The Chosen Life. I will be doing a series where we can go through it together and have some accountability. Right now in the House of Chi, we're doing a daily workout for butts and guts. Butts and guts, getting ready for the summertime, and also strengthening our core for us to be able to move through with endurance and strength for the rest of the year. But The Chosen Life is now available on Amazon. Hundreds of this book have been sold, and I am excited to have re-released it. And this time it's so easy. It comes to you within like a day or two, sometimes the same day because it's available via Prime. And that is all I have for you today. Please make sure you check in the description box below to learn more about my nonprofit, the Fade Tree Foundation, and our gala fundraising event coming up on Friday, June 30th in Baltimore, Maryland. I look forward to seeing you there. Please get connected. We're building community to support our creatives. It's much, much, much needed. And that's all for today. Peace, love, and bliss.